Hello and welcome to another Halloween video in my series. Ihahana and happy Halloween everyone. This is video 3 in my 3-video series this October in 2023, and this video is all about some scary Irish folklore that you may not have heard about. The first video in the series was about 10 plants that gave me kind of spooky Halloween vibes. The second video was all about plants that have some scary folklore, and this video is more focused around Irish folklore and some scary things. So if you've watched my other folklore videos, you may be interested in this one. Particularly of note is my video on the Banshee, reading some scary stories about the Banshee. What is she? What does she do? I will link that all below in the description of this video if you want to go and watch those first. But this video is focused around Irish versions of vampires. Before we get into it, I would just like to ask that if you like this video, please give it a like and comment below. What are your thoughts on Irish vampires and Irish folklore? Do you have any experience of it? And if you do like the videos, please subscribe so that you can be notified every time I upload. So today I'm going to focus on 2 stories that have kind of a loose connection to vampires, or at least the Irish version of vampires in our folklore, which is something that I love. If you know me at all, I love folklore and I love researching these types of videos, and this was particularly interesting for me. And it's actually 2 stories that I didn't know that much about, or I hadn't, like, I've heard the names but I didn't really know what the deep history was. And that's kind of different to, let's say, my Banshee video, which is something that name, like, everybody knows that name, the Banshee. Particularly the new film Banshees of Inisherin has kind of brought that as well into 2022, was it released, or 23? I'm not sure. It's much more widely known and there's a lot more stories on it. So in terms of the research for this video, these 2 stories are kind of, they're far less known, and because of that there's much less information on them on the internet, so it did take some time to figure out what these stories were, but I've put it together for you guys and I've split it into 2 main stories. The first is known as the Abhartach. So this is an Irish word, so it looks a bit weird to those of you who aren't familiar, but the Abhartach was said to be part of the inspiration for Bram Stoker's historic Dracula. If you didn't know, Bram Stoker is actually an Irish author and was the author of the most famous Dracula. So this kind of originated from Ireland, and Bram Stoker had a deep connection with Ireland as well. So a lot of people think that he took some elements of the Abhartach story and used this in his book. So the Abhartach was said to be a kind of wicked, cruel dwarf that wreaked havoc on people and was a really, really cruel person. But this person also had magical kind of powers and was able to just be cruel to people. There isn't much information on what particular cruelties these were, but a lot of people were terrified of the Abhartach. The townspeople of this area were just tormented by this. They were tormented by the presence of this Abhartach and the presence of them in the community. In a town in County Derry in Ireland, there is said to be a monument of the Abhartach in an area called Slaughterty? I don't know. The people were just absolutely tormented by this Abhartach, who was super, super cruel to everybody in the community. And so they actually were just at their wits' end, and they needed to enlist the help of a chieftain to help them get rid of this for good. So this local chieftain, good buddy old pal, went out to the community and killed the Abhartach and successfully killed him and put him in a standing grave, which was very, very common at the time. To their absolute horror, this Abhartach the next day rose again and was even more wicked than before, was even more cruel than before, and it was just absolutely terrifying for the people in this town, and they couldn't understand how this Abhartach came back. So the chieftain, he comes back, he kills him again. It was much more difficult to kill him again, but he got him and he buried him again. The next day, he rose again. But this time, the Abhartach was different. He was, again, more cruel. He was more evil. But he also required fresh blood from the people in the town to survive. So if you can imagine just the absolute terror of these people, he has risen again. This powerful chieftain is not able to kill this Abhartach, and now he's drinking our blood. This is what he requires. And so the image of this Abhartach is just absolutely terrifying. So the chieftain is so confused. He does not understand, like, how am I going to get rid of this for this community? How am I going to make sure that the Abhartach, first of all, dies again, and second of all, stays dead? Like, we need this guy to stay dead because he is terrifying, and now he's drinking people's blood, and it's really, really scary. So the chieftain, totally at his wit's end, he decides to consult a local druid, because at the end of the day, this Abhartach is not some regular human. He has powers, and now he's like morphed into something that drinks blood and is just, this is not of this world. This is not a typical human that the chieftain would have been very used to killing. So he consults this druid, and the druid tells him that the only way to kill this type of being, this Abhartach, is to actually make a sword made out of yew wood. So yew is a common, well, not so common anymore, but it is a tree that's native to Ireland. It takes a very, very long time to grow. It's really beautiful. But the druid says that the only way to kill him is to make a sword that is wooden and is made from yew wood. So the chieftain's like, okay, I'll go do that then. Let me chop down a yew. Let me just make my wooden sword here, and you have to kill the Abhartach using this sword. And the druid also says, not only do you have to do this, but the way you bury him has to be different. You actually have to bury this Abhartach upside down, and then you need to put this big ass stone on top of that grave so he cannot get out. So the chieftain's like, okay, if that's what I gotta do, then that's what I gotta do. I gotta do this for the people. So the chieftain goes back out with his yew sword, and he kills the Abhartach, and he buries him upside down, and he puts a big ass stone on top, and that is the end of the Abhartach for good. The druid was right. He understood. How he knew that, I do not know. But apparently this massive stone and the grave of the Abhartach still exists today in County Derry, in a town called Slaverty or Laverty, which is spelled like slaughter. So I don't know why that is. But there is supposedly a picture of this grave. I've never seen it, never been to it, never even been to Derry. But yeah, so that is the story of the Abhartach. It's really, really interesting. I think the fact that, I mean, it has a lot of similarities to Dracula and to vampires in general. But this story is said to like predate all of that and predate that. I don't know where this idea came from, people being so terrified of something drinking their blood, but it was something that people were terrified about. And it's quite an amazing story. I mean, the similarities of him not being able to be killed like a normal human, and then him rising again, and then requiring wood. Isn't it like a wooden stake through the heart is how you kill vampires in Dracula? Something like that. So a lot of those similarities are quite amazing, and obviously the blood drinking as well is quite crazy. There's no kind of stories of this Abhartach changing people or anything like that, and he's not like called a vampire, or, you know, the Abhartach is like its own being, its own creature. It's a very selective thing. It is not a vampire. It's just this being that happens to not be able to be killed and then comes back and drinks blood. But a really, really interesting story. Not something like the Banshee that would have a direct story that I can find online, but still very interesting. So this second story is known as the Darragh Jew, and this is Irish for red bloodsucker. So not necessarily vampire, but closely associated with vampires and with the Abhartach in general. So the story of the Darragh Jew is very, very interesting, and I think it's quite interesting because it's a lady as well, which isn't like the most common when it comes to kind of vampires and things like that. I mean, in like historical writings, maybe today, yeah. This story starts in a village in County Waterford. So the story starts with this beautiful young woman who is a picture of beauty, and similar to many other stories, this gorgeous woman falls in love with a peasant man, just a peasant, this poor guy, but she loves him. She absolutely loves him. He is her one true love, and there is nobody else for her in this world. Unfortunately though, her father does not approve. Daddy don't approve of this situation, and he is not good enough for her, and he does not accept their love. And the beautiful woman, she has these dreams of getting married to this guy and having kids, and you know, the dream back then. The father will not allow this to happen. So her evil father forces her to ignore this peasant man that she loves and to enter into a marriage with a local chieftain who has a lot of power and a lot of money. And he arranges this marriage for his own benefit, of course. He will get his own riches if this chieftain gets to marry his daughter. So he forces her into this impossible situation. So on her wedding day, she is a vision of beauty. She is dressed in red and gold, and she looks perfect. But she is deeply, deeply unhappy. She's sitting in a corner on her wedding day, all alone, sobbing, thinking, how did my life get to this point, while everyone around her is celebrating and is enjoying the drinks and the riches and everything, and nobody cares about her. Her dreams of this happy family with the man that she loves and the life that she envisioned is just like ripped apart, and she knows that it will never happen now. So she vows revenge. Good old revenge. To make it all worse, this chieftain, this rich chieftain that she has just married, turns out to be incredibly abusive. He beats her. He actually locks her up and only takes her out for his own pleasure. He locks her up with no food, no water, and she slowly wastes away. So eventually, over some time, she just becomes frail and she eventually dies, unfortunately. And straight after she dies, this rich chieftain just goes out and marries some other girl. And he doesn't care at all. Nobody cares. Her funeral comes around, her family are there, and they aren't upset, you know? They have their riches that came from this marriage. They never loved her anyway. She's dead. She's looking up onto this situation with her husband, the chieftain, who's now getting remarried to some other girl, and her family who don't care but have benefited from her demise and her, you know, sorrow. So she rises from her grave and she vows revenge on those that have wronged her. She is driven by dread, anger. So where does she go first? She visits her childhood home where her father lays sleeping, and she rises above him and she sucks all of the blood out of his body. So, yep, that's what she does. She sucks the life out of him, so she drinks his blood. So this is the association now. She rises from the dead and she starts to have a thirst for blood. And after her father is now dead and she's gotten revenge on him, that's not enough, because there's one other man that has also done her wrong. And this is, of course, the chieftain. She goes to the chieftain's house, and again, she drains every ounce of blood from his body. And this is said to be one of the bloodiest stories and figures in Irish mythology in general, is this Darg Drew. And now, while her revenge is complete, she's still bitter. She's bitter about her life and how it has gone. But not only that, she's now developed an absolute thirst for blood. So the Darg Drew is now said to rise from her grave whenever she's thirsty. And she's said to go around and seduce men with her beautiful looks, and then she drinks their blood. That's what she does. So that is the story of the Darg Drew. So again, while it is a female, it's a very interesting story about a woman who's been done wrong, and also this association with rising again from the dead and drinking blood. And these are really, really old stories that are said to predate any vampire type stories. So it's really interesting, and you can see how, you know, if you combine the stories of the Abhartach and the Darg Drew, you can see how you would form the idea of a vampire from these stories. I'm not saying that this is where the original inspiration came from, but I mean, it would make sense if it was in there somewhere. So that is it. for some Irish vampires. As I said, anything that I used in the research for this video I will link in the description of this video, just to give credit to anybody else who has researched or taken the time to write these things. If you enjoyed this video, please do let me know by giving it a like, a comment or subscribe. And I would like to say Oíche Hannah to all of you. Happy Halloween in Irish. I hope that you have a very enjoyable and very safe and lovely Halloween. Just enjoy it. That is it for my little spooky series here on the channel. I hope that you enjoyed all of these 3 videos. So thank you so much for watching. Have a safe and lovely Halloween. I would just like to thank specifically my lovely patrons for supporting me this month. Thank you so much to Michael, Amy, Grace and Yendi. Thank you so much for your support this month. It truly means the world to me. If you are interested in signing up to my Patreon, the link is on the screen and it is also listed in the description of all my recent videos. And you can check out all of the bonus content and perks available for each tier. So that is it. I hope that you enjoyed and I will see you very soon in the next video. That will not be scary related. So see you then. Bye.